Here's everything you might have missed in Ms. Marvel Episode 3. Welcome back, you Marvel maniacs, to another breakdown of Ms. Marvel. We're going to dive deep into this episode along with all the Easter eggs and hidden details that you might have missed in just a moment. However, in order to do so, we need to spoil what happened. So if you're not up to date, leave now before you see something you probably shouldn't.
Yeah, I'll stick to the classics, right? So, let's get everyone out of here.
Go.
Okay, let's get into it, shall we? After introducing us to Kamala Khan's amazing new powers, we learned a lot more this episode about both the origins of her great-grandmother Aisha's bangle and the big bads of the series. As many suspected, Kamala's powers and her family have a connection to the Jinn, the unseen spirits of Arabic and Islamic myth.
I'm a Jinn.
And tonic?
The episode itself begins in British-occupied India back in 1942, where we see a group of people digging through the rubble in a strange underground temple. These are the members of Clandestine, a group of Jinn exiled from the Noor dimension, also known as the Light Dimension. The Light Dimension first appeared in 1980's Amazing Spider-Man 203. It was a universe filled with light and photonic energy that's also believed to be the source of Monica Rambeau's powers when she became Captain Marvel in Amazing Spider-Man Annual number 16. Now, presumably, the Noor dimension is also connected to that purple-hued realm that Kamala glimpsed at AvengerCon in Episode 1. In the comics, Clandestine first appeared in 1994's Marvel Comics Presents 158 before launching their own ongoing series. Created by Alan Davis, they were a family of immortal superhuman characters who were descended from Jinn. Here, they're led by Najma, and their group includes characters named Fariha, Salim, and Adam as well. And while they aren't necessarily direct parallels to the comic versions of Clandestine at first glance, the similarity between Adam and Adam Destine's names feels intentional to say the least. For more on Clandestine, though, check out Rosie Knight's deep dive over on Nerdist. Now, Clandestine were searching for a pair of magical bangles supposedly capable of sending them back to their home dimension. They only discovered one of the bangles, though, before British soldiers drove them away, giving it to Kamala's great-grandmother, Aisha.
Did you see that?
Later, it's inferred that Aisha betrayed the rest of Clandestine, which is why Najma apparently harbors a grudge against Kamala. More fascinating, though, is the overhead shot of the temple, which reveals the 10 rings symbol on the floor. The 10 Rings is both the paramilitary organization that Wenwu organized to amass power over the centuries in Shang-Chi, and it's also the powerful artifacts that are now in Shang-Chi's possession. The Shang-Chi post-credit scene revealed they contain a mysterious beacon emitting a signal that's unlike any alien technology that Carol Danvers has ever seen. And this suggests they are either magical or extra-dimensional in nature, a theory confirmed by the presence of these extra-dimensional bangles in a 10 Rings temple. So the question is, could this pair of bangles they found, connected to a withered blue hand, mean that these are really the Negabands? These powerful Kree artifacts from the comics imbue the user with amazing abilities. When slammed together, they allow one to teleport to the negative zone, hence the Nega and Negabands. The negative zone is a dimension in the comics comprised entirely of antimatter. Now, it's unclear if these bangles are direct one-to-one stand-ins for the Negabands, or if the MCU has their own version of the negative zone, but the strong implication is that using both of these bands together would let the Jinn travel back to the Noor dimension, or the light dimension from which they were exiled. Now, considering that Carol Danvers' powers are Kree in nature, if these are the Negabands, Kree artifacts, that could forge a powerful connection between her and Kamala if the same connection applies. In the comics, the Kree have a long history of meddling with human evolution, and that eventually led to the creation of the Inhumans. In the comics, Kamala's powers are also derived from the Terrigen Mists, which activated latent Inhuman genes in her DNA. But rather than bringing Inhumans into the fold, the show seems to be leaning into a more magical, extra-dimensional direction. And this feels in line with the three main tenets of Phase 4 thus far: mythology, magic, and multiverses, the 3 M's. Back to the matter at hand, though. The Clandestine have been searching for this bangle in a way to get home for 100 years and counting. They lost track of Aisha and her family during the partition in the resulting civil war that erupted after British India was divided into 2 countries along stark religious lines: Hindu-dominant India and Muslim-dominant Pakistan. Now the bangle has worked its way from Kamala's grandmother Sana to Kamala herself. And because she is a descendant of Aisha, that's probably why Kamala can use the bangle's true powers. Likewise, Najma hints that Kamran, another Jinn-human hybrid, could develop powers of his own one day as well, a nod to his inhuman abilities in the comics. Unfortunately for Kamala, it looks like Clandestine were exiled for a pretty good reason, being violent jerks who have no qualms about attacking a teenage girl.
Can we just talk?
Well, that and the fact that Adam can't stop watching Zoe Zimmer's low-calorie popcorn video that we first heard about in episode 2.
Popcorn.
Kamala goes to Bruno for help, and he mentions having casually read a paper on interdimensional travel by Dr. Eric Selvig, which is not exactly surprising for someone with books on circuitry and a poster of Nikola Tesla. Now, you may remember Stellar Skateboard's character from the Thor films. He's an expert on wormholes and theoretical physics. Now, it's possible that Bruno read Selvig's paper about the convergence, the inciting incident in Thor the Dark World, which was a cosmic event every 5,000 years where all 9 realms are aligned.
Simple. Any questions?
Later, when Yusuf helps Bruno translate Urdu text about the Jinn, it's mentioned that for the Jinn to get home, they have to unlock an ancient barrier. But to unlock such an ancient barrier will require a primordial power.
Interesting.
Bruno's research over the course of the episode leads him to a bleak conclusion about that primordial power. You would need the base energy of the sun. Bummer that Otto Octavius was sent back to his own reality in Spider-Man No Way Home, or maybe they too could hold the power of the sun
In the palm of my hand.
So basically, Kamala helping Clandestine return home could wind up creating a massive explosion and do more harm than good.
If you help them go home, some things might go boom.
But even harder for Bruno is admitting that he got into Caltech and might have to move across the country from his best friend.
What?
He really doesn't want to leave Kamala in her time of need, but he also doesn't have a good way to help, quote, a group of ghosts and their average-looking son, end quote. Meanwhile, at the mosque, Damage Control arrives and tries to conduct an unauthorized search, but thankfully Nakia proves exactly why she belongs on the board. She reads them the Riot Act and together with Sheikh Abdullah sends rude-ass Deaver and her cronies packing until they can get a warrant.
Excuse me, Miss Agent. Next time, remove your shoes.
Later, at the Mendi ceremony before the wedding, Amir complains that someone hid all of his shoes.
Ha ha ha! Good joke, everybody.
This is an Indian and Pakistani wedding tradition known as Juta Chori, where a member of the bride's family steals and then hides the groom's shoes. Towards the beginning of the scene, you can see Taisha's younger brother walking off with all of Amir's shoes. After that, Kamala gets her with great power comes great responsibility moment when talking with Sheikh Abdullah about how this new masked vigilante in town can convince everyone that she's actually good. He gives her a piece of advice straight out of the comics. The line, "Good is not a thing you are, it's a thing you do," first appeared in 2014's Ms. Marvel #5. Kamala then opens a mystery package from Bruno which contains a high-quality mask to protect her identity. It's an integral part of her costume in the comics and soon to be on the show as well. Hopefully Kamala will wind up doing some good with it though, because her current Carol Danvers-inspired strategy to punch a hole in space and time and help the Jinn right now seems pretty ill-advised.
Carol Danvers would be reckless.
Later, when Kamala texts Kamran, there's a QR code on the poster next to her vanity. Once again, it leads to a free comic book, this time the Magnificent Ms. Marvel #1. It's a 2019 story with a framing device about aliens in the far-flung future, referring to Kamala as the Destined One, which sounds like pretty convenient timing with the arrival of Clandestine, if you ask me. Kamala's family celebrates Amir and Taisha's wedding with the dulcet tones of the Bon Jovi cover band Brown Jovi. There are also some seriously killer dance moves, including Taisha's brother dressed in the Hulk outfit that Kamala's mom made for her for AvengerCon. Kamran then arrives just as Bruno and Kamala are about to slow dance to warn them that Najma and the other Jinn are coming to attack her. Soon, Kamala finds herself in a Jurassic Park-inspired scenario, evading Clandestine in the wedding venue's kitchen. Don't worry though, no chefs were harmed in the making of this episode.
Absolutely not. No.
Okay, well, maybe one chef, but who's counting? Each member of Clandestine seemingly has both super strength and their own unique weapon. Adam has a giant mace, Fariha has a spear, and Salim has a whip. As for Najma, she has a withering stare and cutting words for her son.
Do not get in my way.
Although Kamala is surprisingly effective at fending off Clandestine with her light constructs, Najma still sends her crashing to the ground. Bruno then draws aggro by throwing presents at Salim, only for Kamala to beat his ass with her embiggen fist all of the comics when he attacks her friend. Kamran, with what appears to be a flail or a bola, tries to buy Kamala and Bruno time to escape, but he winds up getting Cobra Kai'd through a glass balustrade to the floor below. When Najma grabs Kamala's bangle, it lights up, turns both of their eyes purple, and creates yet another vision of the train in Karachi that day that Aisha disappeared. After watching the full Doom train summon from Final Fantasy VIII, Damage Control arrives on the scene with Agent Deaver flanked by elite agents. They seem similar in design to the Superhuman Restraint Unit, aka the Cape Killers that emerged during Civil War in the comics. Clearly, they have very powerful weapons capable of taking down people with superhuman strength, like the members of Clan Destined. And while they take the Jinn and Kamran into custody, Kamala and Bruno manage to slip away because apparently none of them have peripheral vision. That's twice now. Outside, Kamala and Bruno run into Nakia, who's furious to learn Kamala's secret. At home, Kamala's parents want answers, but for once, she has no quick retort or excuse. Upstairs, Kamala gets a call from her grandmother Sana, who tells her to come visit in Karachi, and no, not just to see her grandma, but rather because when Kamala had the vision of the train, so did Sana. And apparently the answers, perhaps including that second bangle Clandestine's looking for, are in Karachi. So with Agent Deaver champing at the bit to find the rest of these enhanced individuals, and a bunch of angry interdimensional Jinn who know Kamala's secret, our hero has her work cut out for her, and we'll be waiting with bated breath for more answers in next week's episode. With that said, in the meantime, we'll have plenty of other deep dives waiting for you over on Nerdist. For now though, tell us, what did you think of this episode? Did you spot anything that we missed?
Where are you getting all this information?
Let us know in the comments below, and for the latest and greatest in the world of pop culture, make sure you stay tuned to Nerdist.com.